Hi everyone, welcome to WeeklyWed from Business School of AI. WeeklyWed is our happy place to share, learn, discuss, and explore. WeeklyWed occurs every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. I'm your host, Yashaswini Vishwanath, and you can call me Yash. I'm logging from Bangalore, India, and I would like to know where you're all coming from. Please type away your name and location in the chat. We would like to get to know you better. I'm a data scientist who focuses on responsible AI here at Mindtree. I'm also pursuing my master's in artificial intelligence, and I'm Sudha student of AI ethics and no-code AI. At WeeklyWed, we empower and enable the audience to break into AI or to explore more of it. Generally, we host speakers from varied backgrounds working on AI and allied technologies. Today is a very special day because we have Craig Pritsky who's going to talk to us about how space tech and AI can intersect and make a difference to this world. Craig Pritsky has is fueled by innovation, and he's built high-power sales organization for startup companies in emerging technology space. His business intuition and entrepreneurial mindset help people envision possibilities and define paths forward to maximize a company's potential. Craig Pritsky, we are here to listen to you and learn from you, and over to you.
Yash, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. And Sudha, thank you for having me here. I am really humbled and honored to participate today. Just a little bit about me. I was actually one of Sudha's students at Stanford for an autonomous vehicles boot camp because a couple of years ago, I recognized that there are all these wonderful emerging technologies out there, and there's people don't really appreciate them. They don't know them. We just we live in this world where we hear about the fourth industrial revolution. We hear about emerging technologies, and we hear about how they're going to affect our lives, but people don't really appreciate them, right? And so I thought to myself, it's time to kind of skill up and understand what the future holds. And so I have spent the preponderance of my career, 20 years, in largely deep tech and high tech startups, particularly in and around medical technology. And I realized about 3.5 years ago that that industry was kind of dying. And so I decided to identify where I can apply my skill sets of sales and business development and commercialization, novel paradigm shifting technologies, and started looking at all these, emerging fourth industrial revolution technologies. And the bug for space technology bit, right? And so I started looking at this and said to myself, why not, right? We're talking about the commercialization of space. We're talking about, international cooperation, movement away from NASA and the military and towards privatization of space exploration. So why not become somebody who's informed of that and somebody who can apply my skill sets of sales and business development to a growing commercial sector. And so I came to appreciate AI through Sudha's class. And contemporaneous to that, I was, indoctrinating myself through International Space University into space. And I began to realize that there's a lot of people out there who know space and a lot of people who know AI, but not a lot of people who know the intersection of the two, right? And there's a lot of people who know blockchain, there's a lot of people who know cybersecurity, but not the intersection of the two, right? And so I decided to, really dive into and become an expert in the intersection of space and artificial intelligence. And so that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. This is a niche. This is a growing niche. I've got some slides I'd like to share. This is, my perspective on artificial intelligence in space. There's a lot of use cases and theoretical use cases. We'll talk about the ones that I'm not covering everything exhaustively. We're going to talk about the ones that are of greatest interest to me, that I think have the biggest potential for revolutionizing the commercial space industry. But ultimately, this is your course, so feel free to make this interactive. Stop me, ask questions. Let's make this collaborative. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts and opinions. So I'm going to share my screen. And
thank you, Greg. Thank you for telling about you, and we are totally excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. So, all right, can you see my screen?
Yeah. Yes, we can see your screen.
You can see you can see the full screen. Great. Okay, perfect. So
yes, full screen.
The talk today. Okay, great. So the talk today, again, it's about artificial intelligence in outer space, right? And this is how I believe AI will create opportunity in the new space economy. There's my contact information. I encourage everybody to stay in touch with me to the extent that you would like to. There's my email, my phone number. If I can be of service to anybody or help anybody in any of your endeavors, please let me know. Or if you just want to grab a cup of coffee sometime, I'm happy to do that too. So you all are well informed about what AI is, right? So AI, artificial intelligence, it makes the world around us smarter, all right? So we know that humans are intelligent, right? We think, we decide, we recognize things. We can play games, right? As we see here, two people are playing, checkers. We can talk with our friends. We can read our favorite newspaper, right? As humans, we can naturally recognize smells, things around us, and how different items function. Now, artificial intelligence, right, holistically, as you know, right, this is how we make machines smart. And we add intelligence to them to do something specific, right? So artificial intelligence in the most holistic sense, as you all know, is intelligence demonstrated by machines, right, as opposed to the natural intelligence displayed by animals, right? And I'm including humans in the animal group there, right? So, foundationally, in the most basic form, this is where we find ourselves in the world today with an appreciation of AI and what AI is, right? And I'm not going to dive into the nitty gritty of machine learning and deep learning and computer vision. We can certainly talk about that if you like, but this is really a 30,000 foot kind of overview. So now what AI is, and I've talked a little bit about space, right? And kind of lay the foundation for the intersection of the two, right? AI and space. Now, we know why AI is important because it is empowering us to do things that we normally, could not do, without it. It's opening up a whole world of possibilities in a whole sphere of fields that we have not, been able to accomplish before or considered before. But why is space important? Why is space important, right? So we all are aware that space is being privatized, space is being commercialized. You can't log on to the internet without seeing Elon Musk's name, and him launching another, Falcon, rocket ship into space, or Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson, the billionaire cowboys, so to speak, right, going into space. And there's actually been some pushback on this, right, from other very influential and wealthy people like Bill Gates and Prince William, who say there's a number of problems on Earth, right? Like why not handle the problems on Earth before we start looking at the problems in space, right? Why go there when we have so many issues that we can solve here? Well, I'm here to argue that space is important because, as my friend Shelley Brunswick at the Space Foundation says, if you solve for space, you solve for Earth, okay? So one thing people may not appreciate is that a good portion of the technologies that we utilize on Earth today have found their genesis in space applications. A couple of my favorites are the Space Pen. This is a pen that can write upside down, write underwater, write in zero gravity. Okay. Now, why is that important? It could be a novelty for us, in our day-to-day lives, but it's definitely got applications for emergency first responders, who may find themselves in conditions where a normal writing implement could not function and they need it. Our cell phones, our everyday cell phones, have technology born in space in them. The GPS we use in our cars, on maritime vehicles, born in space. A memory foam mattress, that technology was born in space. So space has definitely contributed to society, and it continues to contribute. And I believe that the people who are trying to dissuade us from identifying opportunities in space have it wrong, right? Because if we take a step back and we look at this, Earth's problems, okay, and most urgently climate change, can really be solved only from space. That is where we see the tools and data that are already being used to tackle these issues. That's where those tools and data are forged, and where we will see future solutions, find their genesis. The space research, as I've mentioned, has been, it's already been critical in averting one major environmental disaster. Who knows what that is? Does anybody know how space helped us already avert one major environmental disaster? Feel free to shout it out. No? All right. Well, it was NASA satellite data that revealed a frightening and growing hole in the ozone layer over the South Pole. That is a galvanized public concern that led to the 1987 Montreal Protocol, which was the first international agreement that addressed a global environmental problem. So since then, thanks to worldwide restrictions on damaging CFCs or chlorofluorocarbons, the ozone situation stabilized, and a full planetary recovery is expected. So as the case shows that I'm sharing with you, space can provide vital information that we need to understand a problem and a surprising range of ways to solve it. So given the realities of climate change, humanity needs hope. Space has shown us that we can find that hope there.
Craig, that was a very good introduction to the topic. So there were 2 points that really struck my mind. The first one was the privatization of space. And the second one is the problems on Earth we can solve by solving problems in space. And in this context, I want to tell that most of the countries, they are in the space race, and they want to do something in space, and they want to make a name for themselves. If you see USSR, USA, China, India, they're all in the space race, and they want to put a mark on space. They want their country to go on space. I think they are in that race. So is there something that you want to tell about that space race that is there, and how that has become different now with the privatization of space?
Sure. So that's a great question, and thanks for asking, Yash. So what we see is the U.S. is leading the charge in the privatization of space, and that is quickly followed by China. Russia has not yet embraced the privatization of space the way we thought that they would, though they are active in space in other ways, and we'll actually hit on that in just a little bit. But the privatization of space is something that countries that have space-based capacity, like the U.S., like China, like India, like the UAE, they are pursuing this. Now, obviously, the U.S. has the ability to do that faster and greater than other countries, just because of us being, more mature in our military and governmental space programs and the amount of revenue or the amount of funds that we can dedicate to a space program, particularly a commercial space program. But there is a lot of interest out there on bringing commercial activity to space among other countries. And why is that, right? Well, because having government entities alone or military entities alone that are interacting in space does not promote international collaboration. It's beholden to political agenda that commercial space companies are impervious to. SpaceX can or Blue Origin can do what they want to do and explore what they want to explore without being held to public opinion or the direction of politicians, because their funds are not taxpayer dollars largely. Now, of course, there needs to be collaboration with space entities, but by and large, they're impervious to governments dictating where they go. And another reason why privatization of space is critically important and why we're seeing it is because there's like anything else, the agenda of space programs is finite, right? It can only do certain things. But when you have more resources dedicated to something, right, then more opportunity can be unearthed, no pun intended, and found to be can be found to be useful in other applications, right? So that's why we see this move to commercialization. People think that it's because there's a lot of money in there, and there is, right? This is going to be $1 trillion economy. I mean, the numbers are there. This is an emerging sector of the larger economic infrastructure. It's termed new space economy, new space ecosystem. But while people are saying like Bill Gates and Prince William, solve for Earth before you solve for space, that's got it all wrong, because there's so much opportunity out there that only commercial space programs can bring about. So that's part of the reason why there's such a move to commercial space.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for that.
Hey, my pleasure. So I mentioned this a little earlier, and this is kind of my recommendation to everybody, right? To increase and safeguard your relevance, know what others don't, right? So Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, said that instead of trying to be the best at one thing, you should try and become very good at two or more things, right? And he calls this skill stacking. So the same is true for emerging technologies and the domains they serve, right? We have experts in outer space, we have experts in artificial intelligence, but where are the experts at the intersection of both? That could be you guys, that could be everybody on this call, right? So why not? Why not, enhance your skill sets and become, experts at or really good at two things or the intersection thereof?
Yes, Craig. So thanks for that optimism where you gave us this push that we can be there and we can be at the intersection of space tech and artificial intelligence and make our mark on space.
Yeah, hey, that's what I'm here to do. I'm inspired, and I like to share that enthusiasm with others. So one of the things that I think is, really important to recognize is that, investment in anything, right, is going to yield opportunity. Okay, if we invest funds and resources and talent into something, it's going to bear opportunity. And so what we see here is that as of 2020, private investment in artificial intelligence by country, the United States leads the way and China quickly follows, right? So as we see in this figure, the United States remains the leading destination for private investment with over $23.6 billion in funding in 2020, followed by China and then the UK. So if we look at this a little more closely, though, what we see is that the three leading contenders here, the US, China, and the EU, this further validates the United States' dominant position in private AI investment, right? And so while China saw, an exceptionally high amount of private AI investment in 2018, its investment level in 2020 is less than half that of the United States. And so it's important to note that while China has, strong public investments in AI, as well as strong private investments, due to both the central and local governments in China spending heavily on AI R&D, the United States still eclipses that with private investment alone. And so why is this important? Well, this is important because when we couple this with investment into the space sector, we see a marriage. We see a pattern starting to emerge here, right? And we see that traditionally, well, let me back up here. Holistically, just looking at this, we see again the United States is leading the pack, right? And we see that China is in double digits. And so if a country is investing in AI and it's investing in outer space technology, it's going to be well positioned to lead the charge at the intersection of the two, right? It would be alarming to see a disparity in the investments, right? If we saw the United States investing heavily in outer space technology, but not in AI, or China investing, heavily in AI and outer space technology, we would assume that they are not going to be, strong in the intersection of the two technologies. But I share this with you so that, we can become informed as to where these technologies are going to emerge from a global perspective, right? So traditionally, the commercial sector, and yes.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on, please, Yash.
I just had a question here. So you told about how people are investing in it. So you use the word investment, and yes, the investment implies opportunities. Opportunities imply that there is a possibility for us to contribute. So if this is the case, are governments open for individuals to contribute in the space sector? So you talked about privatization, but that is largely with corporations. But what about individuals, students, researchers? Is people like in AI? It is very easy to do something new, to do something innovative. It is all in our computer. We have access to cloud. We have access to all the TPUs, GPUs, and we do some cool model and we contribute. But space is something which is a lot different and involves many stakeholders. So we understand that there is a lot of opportunity because there is a lot of investment, but how open are they?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so let me say this. I think that 10 years ago, the space industry was largely closed. And, it was open to scientists and engineers. And now, because of the commercialization of space, there is a lot of opportunity for people that, in space, we need people in human resources, accountants, salespeople, business development people, human resources. It is not solely isolated to just scientific people anymore. And it's a fully democratized field of the economy. And, why is that? Well, again, because, there's the commercialization of space and new opportunities are opening up. So how does somebody contribute, individually? Well, from, an investment perspective, right? If we're talking about, just dollars, there's a lot of crowdfunding going on in space, which, people might not really appreciate because it takes so much money to, move a space initiative. But anybody who, meets certain criteria can actually invest into, a space company now, because not all of them are gaining the eyes of the traditional large VCs like a SpaceX or Blue Origin. So, there's opportunity for people to participate at that level. On another level, people can, because it's becoming fully democratized, there's an immense opportunity for people to get involved in whatever capacity they want to be involved in relative to their skills and strengths. And one company that I really like to highlight in showing that, anybody can get involved is a company called Relativity Space. Relativity Space was founded by two really brilliant young guys from University of Southern California, USC. both only in their late 20s now. So earlier, they were much younger, where they identified a novel paradigm shifting way of 3D printing not only rocket engines, but the entire rocket. So what goes along with that is, an immense way to save costs, identify reusability, and draw down on waste, right? And they got involved just based off of an idea that they had in engineering class, and now they're billionaires. So I point to that to say that people can get involved at any level depending on what they want to do, because we are finally at a place where space is open for all.
That's good. That's good to know.
So, this slide, just to kind of leave you with this, right? This shows that traditionally the U.S. has dominated, the startup space environment, right? But it's becoming increasingly international, with more non-U.S. companies than U.S. companies receiving investment for the first time. So China's taken the lead among non-U.S. countries. And in 2019, China surpassed all the other countries outside the U.S. in the number of companies receiving financing, right? So the amount of money invested, the number of deals made, the participating investors, China's come in second to the U.S. here, which is really quite telling. So now you know why AI. Now you know why AI is important. We'll talk about some use cases of AI, how it applies to space. Generally, you understand why AI is important to space. You understand why space is important, and who the players in the game are internationally. Now, why, from a use case perspective, why is AI important? How does it help us in space? Well, AI can help drive our advancements in space, right? So artificial intelligence can alert astronauts to danger, okay? Artificial intelligence can be used in Earth observation, right? So think of, on the first point, think of Siri or Alexa, right? Well, let me expound on that. So far, there have been two main areas where AI has been applied in space exploration. There's navigation systems and autonomous science experiments, right? So navigation systems, they provide data for spacecrafts to maneuver through their environment, while autonomous science experiments provide sound research for future trials, right? So instead of having to have an astronaut in space monitor an ongoing experiment, you can have, an artificially intelligent, computer monitoring that, or a program monitoring that, right? What we see now are AI-based assistants. Like I said, think, of Siri or Alexa. So these AI-based assistants, one of the ways that they're becoming, extraordinarily useful is by being able to detect danger in spacecraft, right? So it can notify. What we're seeing is the ability for AI intelligence or artificial intelligence to detect danger in the spacecraft, right? It can notify humans of impending challenges and help astronauts fix them before they become a bigger issue, which could be a problem for cost. It could be a problem for safety, right? If some mechanism on a space shuttle is running askew, artificial intelligence can identify its shortcoming before a human even notices it. So it could be resolved and fixed before it becomes, a calamity. This leads to, cost savings and maintenance, right? And maintenance, resolution. So NASA, ironically, is also using AI in its next endeavor, Artemis, which is set to go to the moon in 2024. They're building an AI-supported spacesuit, right? And so AI will keep the suit informed. It'll keep it oxygenated and powered. And this is a life support system that can communicate with the outside world. With respect to artificial intelligence in application in space and working with human beings, there was an AI assistant called Simon, right? And Simon was flown to the International Space Station in December 2019, and it's being tested for 3 years. And so eventually, this AI assistant will be used to reduce astronaut stress by performing tasks they ask it to do. So NASA's developing, this is going so well, that NASA's developing a companion for astronauts aboard the International Space Station called Robonaut, and that's going to work alongside the astronauts or they can take it on tasks that are too risky for them. So AI, like in other applications terrestrially, can be used to interpret the information that's seen to make decisions and recognize patterns for future purposes. So with respect to Earth observation, we see the AI can be used to interpret information that's seen from space and sent back to Earth. So satellites gather lots of data, enormous amounts of data, and AI has become very effective in processing it intelligently. No pun intended again. So it's been used to estimate heat storage in urban areas. It's been used to combine meteorological data with satellite imagery for wind speed estimation. AI has helped us with solar radiation estimation using geostationary satellite data, among other applications, right? And so AI for data processing is, can also be used within satellites themselves. So recently, scientists tested various AI techniques for remote satellite health monitoring, right? So how's the satellite doing in space, right? So this is capable of analyzing data received from satellites to detect problems and predict the satellite health and present visualization for informed decision making. One of the most important aspects of artificial intelligence in space is this EO, or Earth observation. It increases our knowledge and data, and it empowers us to understand and better protect our planet from changes in climate, pollution, natural disasters, and more.
Craig, I have a question here.
Yes.
The inherent difference between rule-based programmatic computing and artificial intelligence is that there is a certain amount of randomness, there's a certain amount of probability that comes into picture, and there is a stark difference between the programming where we do the encode the rules and all that, and programming where we have the AI based systems, the applications where we have the AI based systems. So how does this impact when we are trying to create for space? Is there any room for chance that they give when we use AI systems? Is there some provision that they make for errors? Because when we have an AI system, it is not correct 100% of the time. There is always some room for error. That is how it learns. AI learns by making mistakes. It could be reinforcement learning. It could be supervised learning, unsupervised learning. So it just learns by doing mistakes and getting the inputs. So
Yep.
how does that make a mark for the space sector when we are applying AI into the space sector?
Yeah, again, another great question, Yash. So you actually highlighted one of the two challenges with AI in space, right? So one is the fact that, when we're trying to use data gained from objects in space, our connectivity with those objects is fleeting, right? Because things are moving all the time, particularly satellites. So we're only able to connect and get data, at given points in time. It's not continuous. There's no opportunity for continuous processing. So that's problem number one. But problem number two, and in line with what you've asked, is that there is room for error, and that's why, like other processes in artificial intelligence, we can't completely eliminate the necessity of human beings being involved in the processing of data and the learning, and the learning capacity of machines. And so, like anything else, human beings have to be involved. Now, the challenge presents itself in that we don't know what we don't know, right? Like, it is hard to, this is all very new, right? This whole commercialization of space is very new. We're starting to, identify opportunities and things that we've never seen before, and trying to make heads or tails of it, as human beings, let alone empowering machines to do that intelligently. So there will need to be, people, strictly involved. The bigger challenge is that there's not a lot of room for error. Okay, there will be room for error because it'll happen, and that's factored into calculations and factored into the review of data and projections made. But this could be very dangerous and very costly, right? This is not like a laptop, like a computer running some algorithm for a company terrestrially, right? This could potentially impact lives. This could potentially impact other spacecraft, international relations, global weather conditions. So there's room for error. People have already been speaking about this. Not a lot of room for error, and hopefully we will be able to wrap our arms around it pretty quick. But right now, this is an imperfect science that people have to be, patient with and be involved in as, it continues developing.
Okay, Craig, there's one more important point from what you mentioned about data. We live in an era where we say data is the new oil. We live in that era, and when we talk about data in the space sector, is there an exponential growth? Because in the other sectors we see exponential growth. There's a lot of data that is available. So in the space sector, are there any key milestones which led to the explosion of data? Are there any key events which one is the explosion of data. The second one is how this data is made available to researchers or students.
Yeah. So the availability and ubiquity of data has become, much more available and has been collected in, new fashions because of this commercialization of space, right? So, now there are new satellites, being put up in space that are predicated on new technologies. So for instance, one company based out of Europe, it uses a technology called synthetic aperture radar in their satellites. So they have, very precise continuous monitoring 24/7 of, weather conditions. So their data, the data that they glean is then sold to insurance companies who are trying to monitor flood conditions and wildfires, that if, there's even a gap in observation or time, that could be, deeply, challenging and meaningful in their, in their assessment of the situation when they're, trying to, serve their customers, right? So there's introduction of new technology that is helping, create more data that has not previously existed. When these data collecting endeavors like satellites have gone up into space. So that makes data, more available. And there's also a recognition that data is the new oil. And so some companies have actually gotten into the space game simply to sell data, right? Because they recognize that that information is extraordinarily important and can be monetized to, for sale to other companies. And the other thing that has made this, very ubiquitous is the explosive commercialization, right? Because like now, whoever wants to send up a satellite, whoever wants to send up, a payload to space with the right, money and resources can do it. And that's why we're able to run blockchain applications from space now. This was a closed, kind of sector to us before, but now it's here. Now it's open. And so, we see that data is, for some people, for some companies, it's the mission, and for others, it's a byproduct. But it is, happening. The collection and processing of it is happening in, a great, capacity because of all these, very recent advancements in technology.
Okay, that's really good to know.
Another way AI can help us is with discovery on other planets, right? So here, we see a rover, and this rover's name is Perseverance. And Perseverance was dispatched or sent to space in July of 2020, and it landed on Mars in February of 2021. And artificial intelligence in space is helping to analyze the landscape of Mars, right? So there's no need for us to be there. It learns the terrain. It helps us navigate the surface, right? So ever since the era of space exploration began, scientists have been trying to figure out how to determine what's happening on Mars because it's very similar to Earth. As we explore and study more and more about Mars, it's become clear that there are many things happening on the planet that are still unknown. And so artificial intelligence in space is helping with analyzing the landscape of Mars by using satellite imagery. And, we don't need to be there. We can't be there. It can't sustain life. But we're learning about it because AI is, embedded into this very intelligent rover.
Great. There's a question from Henry. Henry is our ardent blogger who blogs at Business School of AI for us, and he's from NBC. And Henry has a question for us. Any competition for the big players, SpaceX and Blue Origin? Are there any competitors for the big players?
SpaceX and Blue Origin, really have the market cornered, at this point, with respect to the commercialization of space. If we were to, and I don't have it in this deck, but if we were to look at, a graphic that shows the investment into the U.S. private space economy, the amount that is invested by and through Blue Origin and by and through SpaceX is disproportionately large to the investment in other, companies in the private space sector. So I think that, based on the sheer kind of brilliance and financial power of, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, they're going to be hard to catch. But I don't think that it's impossible. I think that, time will tell, and we will continue, learning, and with learning comes new opportunities. And, there's a lot of brilliant people out there, who are looking to, help bring about further exploration of space and, make us a multi-planetary species. So I think that they are for sure in the lead. I don't think that there's any strong competitors to them that can do what they're doing right now. But I think that particularly because SpaceX is closely aligned with NASA, and they've got a contract to be part of the 2024 landing on the moon. So I think they're going to be hard to catch. I don't think it's it'll be impossible over time. But it's, they're definitely in the lead right now.
Henry has this real beautiful question about the process of turning water stored on the moon. So Henry, would you like to voice your question, or would you like me to read it out for you?
Sure, thank you. I'll take it. Yeah. So you could. Well, I actually thought of something there at the end. I put in the tag of the question. Look how long it takes to traverse space. Machines can shut down and then restart. Unlike for humans, which would, like you mentioned, the cost of human space flight is pretty phenomenal. So that's one thing, one advantage here I'm thinking of. But then also another in that same vein. If we look at that water that's apparently stored on the poles of the moon, and maybe we have some water on Mars, extracting it, trying to think of any kind of machines that, we know that we can extract gold from rock. There are open pit mines I've seen that do that. But I don't know if there's any artificial intelligence that helps with that. But you would think that there would be some application there. You know, if you come up against a problem, the smart machine will be able to recognize it and, you know, with the algorithms, either or, do this, if not that, then this, that kind of thing. Any thoughts on other problems, you know, water, time, anything like that?
Yeah, you know, I think that the greatest problem, you know, and these are all, you know, extremely, you know, important problems, right? Like how do we sustain life in you know, in another ecosystem, in the moon and you know, and beyond, right? I think that it's very interesting to know that if you really kind of, you know, take a step back and look at the, you know, people involved in the new space ecosystem, there's a moon camp and there's a Mars camp, okay? And you know, that they're not mutually exclusive of one another, but people who are passionate about Mars are very, very passionate about Mars, and people who are passionate about the moon are very, very passionate about the moon. And, you know, to me, you know, the moon obviously, you know, seems like the next logical step because we've already been there. We've shown that we can do that. And from there, we can, you know, use that as a base to get to other places. The argument for Mars is that there's a lot of similarities between Mars and the Earth. So, you know, can Mars sustain life like Earth can? Now, the biggest challenge that kind of sucks up the oxygen in the room when speaking about Mars is, you know, not only like the sustaining of life and, you know, water and you know, growing, food and things of that nature. The problem that everybody's trying to resolve around Mars right now is like, how do we get back? You know, we can send people there, but then they become stranded as it stands right now, right? Like it would take 6 months to get there, but then how do we get back? Like nobody's figured out how to get back yet. So that's problem number one. The biggest problem that I have to tell you, Henry, that I have come to appreciate, and I don't know that, you know, artificial intelligence has a solution for this yet, but maybe it will, you know, especially since we see artificial intelligence, you know, starting to, you know, be integrated into healthcare more and more as well, right, terrestrially, is how do humans continue our species in space, right? How does that happen? That's an actual challenge that people are, you know, talking about right now. You know, because we can go to the moon, you know, if we can establish, you know, an encampment on the moon, we can colonize the moon, we can, you know, live on the moon, right? If we don't figure all that out, if we don't figure out how to, you know, propagate our species and continue, you know, having children, then, you know, this is all just, you know, a camping trip, right? Now, I don't know how, you know, I don't know the future of AI helping with that. I do know that there is some, you know, application of artificial intelligence, you know, relative to, you know, fertilization and you know, conception in the you know, terrestrially. So perhaps that technology can be extrapolated to space, but that's actually one of the biggest challenges that we have that we're talking about right now.
Certainly something that we can really look at. I think of this philosopher, if you will, from Israel, has talked about how AI is helping make humans smarter, or it's changing humans in a certain way. I would think that there would be some way that the robots, these autonomous vehicles, would help in the testing of certain places, like set up on Mars or on the moon, to see that they're ready and habitable for us. Another thing I think of is the problem that we have with the gaseous planets. All we've been able to do at this point is crash things into them, and we lose those probes. Maybe we're now on the cusp of actually being able to fly in, do some data, and now gather some data and fly out with these autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, you know, and Henry, and that actually leads to kind of my next point, which is, you know, you mentioned the word crash, right? And one of the things that we see happening in space a lot are the breakdown of objects that we're putting up there. And that creates this phenomenon called space debris or orbital debris. And, just yesterday, orbital debris was created, and an international, challenge was created. And I'm sure everybody's aware of this. Yesterday, Russia decided that they were going to launch a direct descent anti-satellite missile to strike down one of their own satellites, right? Just to kind of see if they could. Now, the U.S. has done this, China's done this, et cetera. But there's a message behind that, all right? And so, national security aside, that did create, more orbital debris. And we see orbital debris, happening all the time, whether something breaks apart or a satellite just dies and it can't, continue its lifespan in space. So, AI is actually, helping with that as well, right? And like one way that they're helping with this is, we see that the European Space Agency, or ESA, partnered with a Swiss startup called ClearSpace that will launch its first debris removal project in 2025, right? So space has developed artificial intelligence systems that can detect, track, and deorbit space debris, right? And so artificial intelligence in space is helping to remove space debris by using data analysis tools, right? So what's the idea there? The idea is that space junk and space debris can be removed using AI and technology, and that could change the way in which we interact with complex missions. So computer science, it'll help us harness large amounts of data created by autonomous algorithms and NASA satellites. And thereafter, the whole idea of Earth observation and space observation can help improve deep space operations and communications from astronauts in space back to Earth. Now, what we saw yesterday was, this explosion of the satellite, and that created 1,500 pieces of trackable orbital debris that's likely to generate hundreds of thousands of pieces of smaller orbital debris. Human beings cannot count this, right? This is not something that we can follow. So we're going to need some kind of, artificially intelligent mechanism to support the monitoring of this orbital debris, because if it is not followed, it's not just about having things in space floating around. This is about things in space floating around crashing into other things, or falling from the sky and not burning up in the atmosphere and creating, calamity on Earth. So artificial intelligence can help us increase our awareness of what's out there and the proximity with which it's, approaching Earth. And then one final point that I want to make is that our artificial intelligence can help us protect our assets, right? So this is called on-orbit servicing of a spacecraft, right? So that means sending something up to space to service the spacecraft while it's there, right? So as we investigate the future of space exploration, we can't overlook the need for spacecraft maintenance missions, right? And so the spacecraft we're launching today, it's designed for routine, assisted, and self-maintenance, including hardware upgrades, refueling, service for jammed systems, like, a solar array breaks down. Here we see, a depiction of a NASA robotic spacecraft that would go to space, and rather than a human being going up there because they can't, or it's too expensive, or it's too dangerous, we can send a robot up there or another small satellite to service it, to identify the problem, to take the learnings that it's gained over time, and keep the satellite from breaking down, or fix it if it has, so that it continues through its life cycle, right? So artificial intelligence can not only help us remove damaged assets in space, it can help us from getting to that point by helping us protect our assets by servicing them in the future as well. And so I'm going to pause there. I've shared with you my content for the day. And hopefully this has shown you just a couple of applications that artificial intelligence can benefit space applications. And this is something that I'm, really passionate about. I hope you've been able to tell, and I encourage everybody to dive further into this, because this is a growing area that needs some experts like everybody on this call to join.
Thank you.
Great. That was really wonderful. And I got this beautiful thought in my head when I was mulling over all the stuff that you told, maybe we can use the space learnings, whatever we have from applying AI to space tech, if we can make a better place for um, and make it inclusive for everybody here on earth, like if it can help somebody who is blind or somebody who is disabled, if we can bring that and apply here, or if we can cure some diseases, or if we can do an operation, like generally there will not be doctors in space, and they might have some technology which will help the astronauts repair themselves. And if we can bring that technology here and cater to remote people where the doctors cannot go, or there could be a lot of possibilities where we can make earth a better place by exploring space and bringing that technology back to earth, back to serving people. Like if we want to have a human-centered technology, we can apply them here and do that. What are your thoughts on that? How we can apply it to make everybody's life better, not just a particular sector of people, but everybody, the disabled, the ones who are there in the remote areas, people of different ethnicities, people of different genders, and the ones who can afford, ones who cannot afford. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Yash, I think that the future and the opportunities are endless, right? And I think that is precisely why we need to go to space, because the barriers right now, the only barrier to entry is money, right? But like as anything, when the new space economy matures, cost of doing business will come down, right? This is very new. We've got the billionaires, Cowboys Club, right? But the cost of doing business will go down. It has to. There's going to be an introduction of new technologies. As I mentioned, 3D printed rockets, things of that nature. Space is democratizing. It's democratizing quickly. As more players enter and more technologies are introduced, there's going to be more opportunity to find things that we don't know and adapt technologies that we do know, and use those to enable people back on Earth. And so I think that your question is spot on as to like why we need to enter the space ecosystem. I think that there are hurdles and barriers to opportunity for people on Earth, and right now space is a level playing field where people are going there with the desire to learn and explore and uncover and grow. And as we find, important technologies and learnings, those can be applied back to Earth, in ways that hopefully are unencumbered and unfettered, as technologies that are founded on Earth are.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that, Craig. It was a wonderful session. The last 1 hour, we had key takeaways and learnings from you. And yeah, there is so much that we want to learn from you, and 1 hour is too short. So thank you. We have to let you go and do your stuff. So thank you for that. Thank you for this wonderful session.
My pleasure. And I encourage anybody who would like to stay in touch. And I would love to, visit again. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.